Michigan. Let's talk Ohio State. Tavian St. Clair, one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Devin Sanchez, awesome corner, obviously. Now, they did lose Offord today, unfortunately, to Oregon. Also Oregon beat out Auburn for him as well. Carter Lowe, Fahim Delane. For Ohio State fans out there, obviously you still got to feel pretty damn good about this class, I'd have to think. Who stands out in your mind, Huff?
I think you look at Devin Sanchez, and I mean, he's elite as a cover corner. He's a top 5 player nationally. He's one of the best, corners to come out in quite some time. He committed back in January, and Ohio State's been able to hold on to him. And you look when they were able to get Caleb Downs to transfer in last year. That again, we talk about some schools that they're known for maybe one side of the ball, but the secondary the last couple of years at Ohio State has cranked out some absolute dudes. And I think that Devin Sanchez is that next dude, and that kind of corner that can be a guy that can cover any receiver at any spot. And so I really like what he is able to do. And, obviously losing Naeem Offord hurts, but it's like with Oregon. They were able to get a DeCorian Moore. Well, Ohio State gets the number 1 corner in the country in Devin Sanchez, an instant impact type guy, especially with some graduation losses expected in Columbus.
Yeah, what's interesting about Ohio State, the talent is at a premium. It always is. I mean, these guys have been working together in lockstep for quite some time. Mark Pantoni, associate AD at player personnel over there, one of the best in the business. So you wonder what needs to change? Because I look at Ohio State every year, they're one of the best classes in the country, top to bottom. That hasn't changed this year. They got the quarterback in Tavian St. Clair. You mentioned Devin Sanchez. If I had to point out a position, maybe it'd be offensive line. Carter Lowe is a guy that we like, a guy that's really kind of knocking on five-star status, basketball background. Is he going to be a right tackle? Is he going to be a left? Ohio State had some struggles this year. They had to piece it together on the offensive line, a little bit of musical chairs. So when you get a guy like that from in-state, it's important to keep him home. That's a big one for them.
And they may not be done. Epi Sitanali, who's one of the top 10 edge rushers in the country, a top 10 player in the state of California, had been committed to UCLA since the spring. He took an official visit out to Columbus this last weekend. Oregon moved ahead of Ohio State in the Big Ten rankings and in the national rankings on the heels of Ohio State losing Naeem Offord and Oregon getting him. But if they can get Epi, that might move them back ahead of Oregon in the Big Ten rankings and back into that number 4 spot. But again, you look at Ohio State and you look at what they've done on the defensive line too. You got Trajan Odom, you got Jay Cook. Trajan Odom is a basketball guy. He's a West Coast guy originally. He spent his last couple of years in North Carolina, but he was born in Los Angeles. USC wanted him badly. Oregon wanted him badly. His mom was an assistant basketball coach at USC, and Ohio State got his commitment in the summer. A guy that I know you got a chance to see during the Under Armour circuit, a good athlete, and that's kind of one of their lower-rated players, but a guy that I think on the defensive line could be an impact player when he gets to Columbus after a year or two of kind of refining his body a little bit. But it's kind of what that second and third tier of what Ohio State does, where a lot of those guys end up becoming, we know they get the stars. We know they get the big-time guys. But a lot of times it has been that second and third tier player that they've gotten that have been the impact guys for Ryan Day.
So you guys have worked in these buildings before. Obviously, Ryan Day is not getting fired. At least I don't think so today, and I'd be really surprised. But there's so much of that out there on social media, on various other media platforms. How do you combat that when you're talking to families of recruits? Like, this guy basically only loses to national championship winners or contenders, with, I guess, maybe this year's Michigan exception. Like, how do you combat the negative recruiting there from a PR standpoint?
You keep the outside noise outside. I mean, you just got to continue to focus on the process. And if you look at that from a recruiting standpoint and on-field standpoint, Ohio State is one of the most consistent programs in the country at the top of the game. And it will happen for him eventually. I think the biggest thing that Ryan Day, his staff, need to find a way to get over the hump. People are going to point at Oregon. People are going to point at Michigan. Those teams have identities. They're tough, and they're tough in the trenches. Oregon's maybe one of the more well-rounded teams in the entire country. Michigan, you know what they're going to be at the point of attack. It seems like those teams are the teams that are giving Ohio State the most trouble. And it's not like an entirely a personnel issue, but it's more of like, all right, when we got to go, when the going gets tough, we got to play a physical game. Can we win that type of game? We've talked about Oregon being able to beat a number of different opponents. And what I mean by that, that's more stylistically. Ohio State, it seems like, all right, once we get into this kind of certain type of matchup, that's when we struggle. So Ohio State, listen, they're not far off by any means. I get it. You've lost the last 4 games against Michigan. I understand that. But at the same time here, there's some tweaking that needs to happen. That being said, it's been needing to happen for the last 4 years, right? So you're getting to that point and say, all right, why haven't we done it?